Hello again, Steve here with a bit of a follow-up on the discussion that's been going on with um, the suppression of a lot of information, right? The um, censoring of what's deemed to be politically incorrect in general, right? And this also applies to us because we want to sometimes get involved with that censoring because we're afraid of our careers and all this sort of thing. And it's like we want to kick the can down the road so that it's comfortable in the moment. But this also applies to, procrastination. Lots of times we procrastinate on doing things because it's easier in the moment to procrastinate, but then it puts it off to a more inevitable situation later. Now, the reason it's so important, and with all this discussion of what's going on in Luton in the UK and Birmingham and these sort of things with these rape grooming gangs who are raping young girls and so on, and it's being covered up by the politicians, the council members, the police, the judges, the media. It's being covered up by everybody, and probably because there's a threat from the imams and so on in these mosques that if you expose this sort of thing, we cannot prevent the Muslim radicalists within our community from going, from taking revenge or some sort of thing. I don't know for sure, but this seems like what it could be. The problem with this, though, is it sets up a double standard of justice. So one group is treated with kids' gloves, and the other side gets treated with immediate control. It's like the argument is, well, we cannot control who comes into our country because there's so many people coming and so on, and this is why some jihadists are going to get through and come over and so on. And yet, when some foreign journalists want to come over and talk about this sort of thing, they're arrested right away, right? All the resources are there for them. Throw them in jail for a few days, kick them out of the country. It's not because there's not resources, as so it appears to be anyway. It seems to be because there's no political will. Because of political correctness, you cannot talk about certain people. You can only talk about other people because certain people have greater privileges than others, is what it seems to be. And it seems to be because the ones who are more threatening have greater privileges. So you can see that schoolyard bullying does actually work in the real world. Now, the reason this is important that we talk about this is not only what can we learn for ourselves, what can we learn about society, but if it's left to go on and on and on and on, and there's no free speech allowed, then if free speech is stymied, what happens is a pressure cooker, it's like a pressure cooker will build up within us as a society and within different parts of the world and different societies, so that if free speech is not allowed, then there could be physical acting out. And this is very dangerous. This is civil war, this is group violence, this is all sorts of things. Like, the old saying, certain people are very, very nice until they're not, right? And that's the problem. And what happens is when you have violence acting out, that otherwise good people get caught up in it, in the crossfire, right? Like, as an example, before the Second World War, okay, Germans perceived that Jews were not treating them well, right? And a despot, a guy who was very eloquent and so on, whipped them up into a frenzy saying, those guys are the problem, right? So now, while there may have been criminal elements within them, I don't know for sure, but then their decision is to round them all up, right? And this, I can tell people right now, and I had a good discussion with a guy from India just yesterday actually about this, and I think he agrees with me. The problem is that if this sort of thing is not allowed to be openly discussed, eventually, if it continues, then what's going to happen is eventually people are not going to be nice anymore. They're not going to just, if they can't talk about it, then they're going to act about it. And what's going to happen is people who are not implicated whatsoever are going to get wrapped up in it, in the vigilante justice. And that's not good. That's not good at all. But if history tells us something, if we can't have freedom of speech, then there's going to be groups who are going to take it. And that's a challenge. And this is one of the reasons, and this is also, I put this out as a danger of what's happening on social media too. Whenever you stymie something, you're killing something, right? And you're killing, so to stymie free speech in a country, you're killing the country, because that's what the foundation of the country is. You stymie free speech on these social media platforms, you're killing your platform. YouTube, you are constantly kicking people off. Facebook's basically almost dead now. They've kicked upwards of 40% of conservatives off of Facebook now. Facebook, sayonara. You're done. You're done. You're what are you now? Much more than a messaging platform, right? And who is it? Zuckerberg now. He's already it's been leaked out now that he's selling massive amounts of his stock in Facebook. Well, he sees the writing on the wall. He doesn't give a shit about it anymore. He censored the hell out of it, and now it's useless. So up it's going to rise other alternative social medias, and YouTube has been a great platform, still is a great platform, but they're constantly going after this group and that group and this group and that group because of the activists within, and they don't want to agitate with them. They don't want to mess with the squeaky wheel, right? And it's the same thing in societies. If you can't talk about certain people because they're a threat, if you do talk about them, then sure, it's momentary peace, right? You kick the can down the road, it's appeasement, but eventually there's an end game to that. There's a limit to that, and at a certain point, nice people will no longer be nice, and that's a big problem, because otherwise innocent people who may be perceived to be implicated in what's been going on will be wrapped up in it, and I'm starting to speak up about it to those who I know who could be involved in it, in the perception. And it's like, know this, just be aware of it, because it's all of our responsibilities to speak up if we know something is going on. And any time that free speech is hampered with, and the freedom of speech is put down, it's the early waves of a war. It's the info war. It's what it's called, right? And it's not good. Steve here, doing great chatting. If you like what I'm doing, please like, subscribe, and share. Talk again soon. Bye for now.